I'm Dr. Sarah Olivo.
And I'm Dr. Liz Seidler, and you're listening to College is Fine, Everything's Fine.
I don't think anyone's going to be curious to know why we're doing this next series, do you?
No, I don't. I think we know that there's higher rates of depression and anxiety amongst college athletes, and I think they face unique demands and pressures. And at the one side, I am sad to hear about the mental health challenges they're facing. I'm also grateful that it's been publicized in the news. And our goal in this next series that Sarah and I have put together is to highlight student athletes, the professionals they work with. And so we can get an insider's perspective on what their lives are and maybe what are some of the things that we need to pay more attention to so that they can stay physically and mentally healthy while they're at school.
Yeah, I think that there is this sense that sometimes these people are impenetrable, they're strong, they have confidence, and all these things can be true. There's this concept, kind of a dialectic in DBT, which is apparent competence and unrelenting crisis. I don't mean to say that's what's happening with these athletes, but I think a lot of times we can see people who look so strong on the surface and they're amazing in keeping their head above water. And then no one's really paying attention to how hard they're having to kick to do that.
And we'll say that Sarah and I, in these upcoming episodes, will talk about some of the struggles and the demands of college athletes, but in the spirit of being dialectical, there obviously are so many positives to being a college athlete in terms of this built-in family that you get immediately on campus, leadership skills, effective time management skills, confidence building. So it's a blessing to be part of a college team and an honor. And at the same time, we want to just share some voices around some of the struggles that maybe go unheard.
Right. Absolutely. And you see a lot of the professional athletes coming to the fore and saying, listen, this is something that I'm willing to use my voice. I'm willing to step out of the arena for a second because I need to focus on my mental health and my world outside of sports for a split second. DeMar DeRozan reflecting on this at his time at USC. You have Kevin Love speaking more openly to the NBA about the need for more mental health support. Naomi Osaka, I loved her when she was like, I'm out. This isn't working for me. Part of me is you're just helped so many student athletes and athletes in general make that choice for themselves. Bravo. I'm sure that was not an easy choice.
And I think every sport, there's been an athlete that's come forward and talked about their mental health difficulties. And that has led us to wonder, why is there just this discrepancy? It's been normalized by the top athletes in the world that this is a common experience and that we should do something about it. And despite that, the rates are still really high. Their seeking treatment is pretty low.
A big part of our work is not to say, oh, goodness, everyone's anxious, depressed, or struggling with substance abuse. It's not to say that at all. It's just loving the idea that there's a recognition that there's a wide range of voices amongst student athletes. These are people who are individuals after all, and we need to recognize and validate the range of experiences and athletes that are in this world. So we're hoping that today is just part of that conversation. So our first interview is with a college coach to see what role does he feel like he needs to play? How has that changed over time? And what happens in his mind when a student athlete comes to him for help?
In our second interview, we will interview Jonathan Fader, who is a clinical psychologist who has spent his career working with top athletes. He's the author of the book, Life as Sport, What Top Athletes Can Teach You About How to Win in Life. And he'll be sharing a set of techniques that he has used with athletes that can help them take care of their mind as much as they take care of their physical strength.
And then, of course, last but not least, you guys know we always emphasize the college student perspective. We're going to draw on some experiences from current college athletes, former college athletes, people who played in high school and had to shift to a student role without that college athlete title. We're going to talk a little bit about the identity of the athlete and how that can be helpful, how that can sometimes be hurtful. We'll talk also about that dialectic between team mind versus individual mind and when to notice that perhaps you've shifted too much into one extreme or the other. So we can't wait to share these interviews with you. But first off, you're going to hear a little bit more about our interview with Dan. And Liz, I felt like he was so heartfelt. The students on his team clearly are really lucky to have him on their side. You'll hear, obviously, listeners, him share about some of those individual experiences, but I think that one of the things that was really nice to hear is how much he cares about the full person on his team.
Yeah, I love that interview. I was like, oh my gosh, like one, he was meant to coach. Lucky he found his passion. And two, I was like, I want to be on a team. Like I left being like, this is why sports are so wonderful. I really felt leaving like this was an honest description of the type of community he has created at Stonybrook with his other coaches and colleagues. And I thought it was wonderful that he was really honest about his own journey with mental health and access personally to mental health care and how that's changed his mindset. And is something that he seems to feel comfortable self-disclosing to the athletes that he works with. So just wonderful all around. It's a great interview.
We'll let you listen in for yourself to hear him speak. But at the end of this, we're going to come back because we know that this is one coach and one school with one set of values. We want to make sure that at the end of this episode, you still, if this is not your experience, have some ways to reach out, get some support, take care of yourself.
And the last thing I wanted to just share is that whether you've never played a sport or a spectator possibly, or literally have no interest in sports, I think there is something about being an athlete and managing and juggling a lot of priorities in college that every college student can really understand. And I think the techniques and the tips and things that we'll discuss, both from the experts that we are talking to, as well as when Sarah and I chime in, are tools that will be useful to you, whether it's at this stage of your life or another stage of your life. So today, guys, we have Dan Rickard. He's the assistant coach of the men's basketball team at State University of New York at Stonybrook. The Seawolves play in the NCAA at the Division I level. Dan has been coaching at Stonybrook for over a decade, also played for the Seawolves during his undergraduate studies. We're so lucky to have a former college athlete and a seasoned coach here today to share their perspective of life on campus as a student athlete. All right, Dan, how did I do? Is that bio right? Did I get the time frame right in terms of
That's great. I like it because you make me sound younger. This is actually my 19th year coaching.
Gosh. Okay, so over a decade, but almost 2 decades.
Right. So decade sounds better. Makes me feel younger.
Okay. All right. So why don't you tell us first, like, why coaching? Like, how did you make the decision to coach after your college basketball career? How did you end up staying at Stonybrook?
So my father, so my family is coaches and teachers. That's how I was raised. I was around it. So my father was a math teacher and a basketball coach in high school at a small high school in Long Island here, St. Mary's High School. And then he moved upstate and worked at a community college, Orange County Community College, was the director of the math department there and a basketball coach. So I grew up around basketball. I grew up around practices. And from the day that I was out of college, that's all I wanted to be, was a basketball coach. And I was fortunate enough to being around it help me become a better player. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to play at Stonybrook University, be on the team here. And my first year out of college, they offered me a job here. And it was like amazing because if you don't follow college athletics, it's not very common the year after you graduate from college to be able to go right into coaching. I enjoyed school, but growing up, the only thing I ever wanted to do was play or follow the NBA or follow college. I was a Sports Center guy. Every morning before school, I was watching Sports Center, checking out the scores from the night before. And so it became my identity, I would say, in the basketball world. I enjoyed that part of it. But the other thing it was getting to know people. And one of the benefits, I think, of being in athletics is you get to meet people from different areas, different lived experiences that think differently than you do. So that was really cool to me. And I jumped right on board and loved it and been loving it ever since.
So I don't think we need to ask whether or not you prefer college sports over professional sports. I feel like we got our answer.
Yeah, I'm a college sports guy.
Right. There's nothing like a good college sports rivalry. Nothing beats that sense of passion for sure. So as we mentioned before, we're getting to know you a bit. Liz and I were not college athletes. So maybe you could share with us what a typical week would look like for a Stonybrook or a typical college athlete.
And I think, so I can speak specifically to men's basketball. And so men's basketball is a 2-semester sport, right? So our first official day of practice is September 26th. We play for the whole first semester. We stay here over the Christmas break or the intersession break, and then we start again. We continue, but the semester starts in January and we don't finish till the middle of March. So basketball is a higher demand, probably focused on the season for each student athlete. And the seasons are different. So when we're in season, we practice 20 hours a week and we get, or 20 hours of competition, and we to work 5 days of the 7 days in the week. So for a typical week, when the season starts at practice, our guys will wake up, breakfast, class. Then they'll come to the gym at 12 o'clock. We'll practice from about 12 to 3, film, individual instruction, practice all tied into one. And then they lift weights after that from about 3 to 3:45. And then shower, change, grab something to eat, and then off to class again for the rest of the day. And so that happens 5 out of 7 days. We typically go for our season. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, off Sunday. That's a typical week when the season starts before games start.
When do they have fun?
They have fun on the court. We don't let them have fun anywhere else. They have fun being around us. But it is, and we'll talk about this later on, I'm assuming. It is. You have to really make a decision what you want to be. And I think, especially at this level, Division I level, where, you're on scholarship and you're investing, and it is more of a full-time job at this level than it is maybe at the Division III or Division II level. So that's something you have to really consider when making a decision on what level you want to play at. And then when the games start, so we started games this past Monday, we flew down to Florida on Friday. It's a hike to get down to Gainesville. We played the University of Florida on Monday, so we were there Saturday night, was in Florida on Sunday, practiced there, a lot of film, played Monday, flew home Tuesday, right back to it, on Wednesday, Thursday, and then we play again tonight. So there's not a lot of time to really get away from basketball. And we encourage it as much as we can, but it is difficult this time of year.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just the traveling alone, it takes me like 2 weeks, I feel like, after I fly and go somewhere to re-regulate, but that might be because of my age. Okay, so the pandemic, our favorite topic. Sarah and I just released an episode recently about the impact it's had on college students. And I imagine college athletes, it might have impacted in different ways than a typical student athlete. And have you noticed any changes in mental health functioning, even just being on a college campus more broadly, or how it has impacted the athletes that you're working with?
It certainly has impacted our student athletes. And the benefit of being an athlete, in my opinion, was you did get some socialization during the pandemic, where everywhere else you had to be in your room alone. You had to eat by yourself. You couldn't congregate with more than 2 people. It became really difficult, and it was tough on a lot of people. But for our guys, every day we were able to get together and practice and hang out in the locker room or wherever, on the bus when we were traveling a game. So I do think, as an athlete, it might have been a little bit better than the typical college student. It was hard for our guys. You want them to be together as much as possible. The bonds you develop off the court help you on the court, right? And so we want guys to spend time together. You want to spend time away from each other too, because you want to experience the other parts of a college campus and meet other people. And so it became just difficult for them on an everyday. They got tired of it. Oh my goodness, when is this going to end? And how are we going to get through this? So it was difficult. I do think we're coming out of it a little bit. I do think that, especially at Stonybrook University, it's nice to see the campus is full.
So our episode that we aired on COVID said that the personality changes we're seeing in young adults, including the college-age students, had less agreeable, less conscientious or self-disciplined, more stressed. Are you noticing a shift back to a typical mental health state for them?
And I think I do. I think that we're coming out of it, but I do think you notice some things. And being an athlete, your life is very regimented, right? You wake up, you have a class at a specific time, you come to practice at a specific time, you eat at a specific time. So when classes went online and you could do them synchronously or asynchronously, I think they put class at the back burner a lot of times, and they got left behind a little bit, or they were procrastinating. And so I do think the conscientiousness, for sure, when it related to things that they didn't love in this COVID era, I think we developed some bad habits with that. And we still have a few guys struggling with that, trying to get them back to where they were before in terms of time management and really focusing on their academics even if it wasn't exactly what the classes they want to be in. So I think the conscientiousness for sure. I think the irritableness too, you can see it. I think kids are a little short. And if it doesn't go 100% their way, they're a little bit frayed and a little bit disappointed more, or a little more disappointed, I should say. So I definitely could see those studies being accurate. I do feel like it is getting better. I do feel like this semester our guys have done a much better job in the classroom, and they've done a much better job focusing on their schoolwork and the stuff outside of basketball. But again, the only thing they could do was be in the gym. If they weren't in the gym, they had to be in their dorm room all by themselves. And so it was really difficult to get away from anything but basketball.
It seems like there was like a silver lining of being part of a team was you had this kind of cohort of people you were allowed to be with. And then in all the other ways, like you said, academically, there were challenges. I'm sure even not having as many spectators at the games, that their experience of playing basketball.
I think that the biggest challenge was, there's two challenges, I think. My experience here was no spectators. We had a whole season without fans coming to the game. And that was difficult. That was a big adjustment for our guys. But they were able to play. So that was nice. And the second thing came to the vaccine. People have their own thoughts on the vaccine and what they want, what they don't want. And you can agree or disagree, but people have freedom of thought. And our guys they had to get vaccinated. So there were a few guys that probably didn't want to do it, felt like they were forced to do it, and they did it so they could be part of the team. And so I do think that was another, as you add COVID in, there was another layer of, oh man, I got to get vaccinated. I don't really want to get vaccinated, but if I'm going to be on the team, I have to. And there were other guys that were just like, yeah, get vaccinated. I get a flu shot every year. Like, of course, you're silly not to get it, right? I think we handled it well, but that's another sort of issue, but another part of the pandemic that maybe we don't talk about as much.
There's just the idea that when you're part of a team, decisions often are made for you as a group. And this is something, we didn't have this as one of our questions, but just to piggyback off that, when I think about team mentality and court mentality or field mentality, whichever one you're playing on, it reminds me when I worked at the VA for people who were veterans, soldiers, and they had battle mind. This idea of you're part of a troop, you go in, you take orders, you don't make individual decisions. That can be really effective when you're part of a team. I'm curious if you see where that really works well, and then what happens to that mentality where it might not work as well for an individual student or someone in a relationship outside of the team with their family or other friends or partners. That team mind versus individual student mind.
And I think it happens a lot. And I think, I say this even with my own children. My son is starting soccer and he's 10 years old and he's on a travel soccer team. So he made this commitment to be on a travel soccer team. We play a game tonight and he doesn't like to miss a game. But his buddies miss practice sometimes, right? Because they have other things going on. And my wife and I, our general philosophy is you make a commitment to a team. It's more than about yourself. So your decisions have to be based around the team. And so he's going to miss the first half of our game tonight because he has to be at practice tonight. And so I think it's in any level, right? When you join something that is bigger than yourself, I think you have to put the team first. And our sort of mantra this season for our team is team first. Every decision you make individually should have a team dynamic at the forefront of it. Now, you have to make your own individual decisions. You have to prioritize yourself in a certain way also. But when the finality of the decision you make, it has to be with the best intentions of the team at first. And certainly for coaches, that's what we do all the time. I think we talk about this like in just development. Individual development, the decisions we make on personnel, they have to give the team the best chance to be successful. So even if you want to discipline somebody, is that the best decision for the team or is that the best decision for the individual? And so I think we're always constantly battling what's best for each individual person over what's best for our team. And I think it can be subjective in a way too, right? People have different ideas of what that might look like. But definitely, I think when we talk to our team, okay, how committed are you to winning? And we talk about chemistry, and I like to say this all the time. Chemistry is about the amount of people that put winning above everything else, right? It's not so much about being best friends with somebody else. It's about who is going to put winning above all else. So are you going to go out on a Thursday night and party? Doesn't mean you can't go out and hang out. Doesn't mean you can't be social, but are you going to spend all night out and get back at 2 a.m? Or are you going to go out, get back to bed at a reasonable hour, put the things in your body that you're supposed to put into your body, right? So I think those little decisions are probably the biggest challenge for our guys on an individual base compared to what is best for the team.
I always say, like, to teachers or coaches, you're on the front lines and probably see college students the most frequently. And I imagine mental health issues can't really go unnoticed among student athletes because it likely impacts their athletic performance. What role do you feel like the coach has in paying attention to any mental health issues that they might notice on the team? And when is it clear to you that it might be helpful for them to get outside support?
I think the first thing you have to realize is sometimes you don't notice it, right? Because when you see, unfortunately, when it gets to a point where suicide happens, right? Because it does happen, and no one wants to really talk about that too much, but you have to talk about it. A lot of the times it's, wow, we didn't really know it, but then things come back to you and you say, maybe there were some signs there that we didn't notice. So I think we try to be as perceptive as possible and try to engage our guys every day in a way that's building them up, right? And so we have a huge role. I think it's a primary role in the whole mental health process. I'll say here at Stonybrook University, we have great leadership from the athletic department, and with our mental health professionals here, we've invested a lot of money into partnering with people on campus, but also outside psychologists and clinical workers to get in on the forefront of it and really get out in front. And we've done a great job with the education for our student athletes. They have a process in here where you don't even have to tell your coach if you need to seek help. And it's a collaborative effort, academic advisors, athletic trainers, strength conditioning coaches, and our coaches as well. So I will say, I think the education here is A+. From when I played at Stonybrook, we never talked about it when I was here 20 years ago, student athlete. And now in the educational orientation process for all our student athletes, it's one of the biggest topics that we have in that orientation process. But as a coach, it's the exciting part for me. I think it's great. I love talking to our guys. My favorite part of the day is interacting with our student athletes. And if you're a coach, that should be your favorite part of the day. And I think you have to be aware and you have to be conscious. And if things happen, and we have a couple guys that, like, for example, we have a couple players on our team this year where they're freshmen and they're going through it for the first time. And maybe they failed a little bit more than they're used to failing. And so you grab them on the side and say, listen, it's going to be a journey. It's a process. You're going to fail. You're going to learn. You're going to succeed. You're going to fail again. But it's why, and I like to say it's why you came to Stonybrook. It's why you came here, because we're going to provide a nurturing environment where you're going to fail and there's going to be challenges, but we're going to help catch you when you fall and build you up. You're not going to love me every day. You're going to be challenged every day, but that's what's going to make you the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. And when in my experience here, we've had student athletes that have run the gamut. Some guys don't feel comfortable talking to the coaches about it. And so they go directly to the mental health professionals in the program. Other guys come in the office, and one guy, for example, about 3 years ago came in and said, Coach, I need help. I really need help. I'm struggling academically. I'm struggling on the court. I don't feel good. And it was awesome. And you feel so proud of those moments because they feel that they can trust you enough where they can come to you and speak. And it's our job to immediately pass that on to, again, mental health professionals here, the consultants here in the athletic department, who then can get them the appropriate help that they need. We are very conscious of it. We have good education for coaches here at Stonybrook. We don't have all the answers, of course. I don't try to pretend I'm a psychologist. Coach Ford is the head coach here. He makes that clear in one of our first team meetings. And he doesn't say it like this, but we're not psychologists. We're not people that can help you, but we'd love to get you the help that you need. If you need it, feel free. There'll be no repercussions against you if you need it. It's not like the old days where if you said you were struggling, you'd be mentally soft. Those days are over. I think people, thank goodness that they're over, but I think people now understand, listen, everyone goes through something at some point in their life that's a big challenge, and how do we help them through it?
I think you said something really amazing, which was when that student came to you, you said, this is awesome. Your response was, I love this, that this person felt like they could open up. And so maybe that's a good piggyback to the next question, which is, what are the traits, maybe the coping skills or the habits that you feel like help someone tolerate the discipline and commitment that's needed to be on a team? And what are some of the pitfalls where you've seen, hey, this person maybe didn't have a coping skill on the back burner or didn't open up?
I think it's individually based. I think one of the things that we do look for is how people interact, like for basketball specifically, right? Like we look for how they interact with their teammates. Are they a good teammate? Are they someone that communicates well with their teammates? What's their body language like when things aren't going their way? So I think body language, I think communication skills, I think an open-mindedness to new things, right, is really important. I think when people, in terms of pitfalls, it's hard to find, it's hard to put your finger on it. But people that are only into their own stuff, into their own mind, care only about how anything affects them, those are the things that I think get isolated. And when you isolate that and your identity as a basketball player and all you care about is yourself, or it's not all you care about, but when you focus so much on that and you struggle, you can get down a path that's not where you want to head down. People that, that are more team oriented, work well with others better, I think they're more open to like saying, hey, I got something going on here. I need to communicate this with somebody else. Hopefully they can talk me through it, or they can help me see what a different side of something that maybe I'm not looking at. So I don't know if I have a great answer for that, but I do think you try to find people that work well with others, open to different ideas, and have great communication skills.
So you just described something we talk about, beginner's mind. One of the topics we've already talked about in this podcast, which is the idea of beginner's mind, the idea that going into something as if you don't already have everything figured out, thinking, I love the idea of curiosity over having all the answers. And so in terms of a psychological, we stole this from Buddhism, if we're being totally honest, in terms of a psychological construct, willingness and having a beginner's mind seems like it's something that allows them to be a more mentally flexible player and commit more to the team, but also to, if you can find a balance between not completely being completely selfless and balancing that with being a team member, so that when you're struggling, you can go and say, Coach, I need help. I'm not only making a decision for the team, which would be to not miss that practice or keep pushing. So it seems like there's a balance between I need real help and also I need to make sure that I'm committed to a group of people. There's a values conflict there sometimes. Team contribution, individual needs, and when they need, how they balance which one they're putting on the kind of the front burner seems like it's important.
It's good. I'm glad you said you're a lot better at speaking than I am.
Dan, 7 years. 7 years of school. Okay. I hope I'm better.
But curiosity is something that we do look for, just in terms of basketball players too. And you want guys that ask the right questions. You want guys that are curious about, why is coach doing that? And you don't want them to, and there's a balance. You don't want them to question everything, but you do want them to think about and have an idea of what is coach looking at right here in that mold. And when you talk about our biggest challenge as coaches is role allocation. Our biggest job as coaches is the roles and making sure each individual player on our team sees himself in the role that they can be successful in, right? We talk about that. Be a star in your role. Not everyone's gonna be a star of the team, but you got to be a star in your role on the team. Not everyone can play 25 minutes a game. Not everyone can score 20 points a game. Not everyone's going to get 10 rebounds a game, but everyone can contribute their own individual way and help our team be successful. And I think you just nailed it right on the head there. Like that is, as a coach, I think the most important thing you do. Control your environment and put the guys or women, right? People on your team in a position to be successful in the role that they can help your team win.
So you mentioned earlier that you feel like there's been a lot of destigmatization of like mental health, and then there's like more awareness. And I definitely think we can look at professional sports, whether it's Simone Biles with the yips or Kevin Love or DeMar DeRozan in the NBA, the list, Michael Phelps, like you could just go through. I guess I still think there probably are student athletes out there that are really worried about coming forward, whether it's performance anxiety or struggling with time management and organizational skills and their executive functioning. So if there was a college athlete that was listening, and that is a mission that Sarah and I both have, to normalize the college experience and to help college students not feel alone in their experience. So if there was a student athlete that was really struggling with some of the issues that we spoke about today, like what would you really say to them that would maybe help encourage them to go to their coach, go to a teammate, find support within their community?
So I'll say two things because I'm around it. So first, I'm a convert, right? I was like, really, mental health, is that really a thing? Like, just toughen up. That was how I viewed it as a young student athlete, as a young player. And then my father passed away in an earlier age. He was a couple years ago. And for the first time in my life, I had real life adversity. Like for the first time, I was lucky enough to be born into a really nice family, have great, big, a lot of family values, big family, 6 brothers and sisters. Like I had a really good life growing up, everything, play sports, go to high school, graduate, go to college, graduate. We didn't have all the money in the world, but we had really, really good foundational home. And so for the first time in my life, I had, some real adversity, and I was a basket case. You can ask my wife. I didn't know how to function. And I said and I couldn't sleep at night, and I felt like I couldn't eat. And it was just, I didn't know how to handle myself. And I finally was like to my wife, you need to go see somebody, talk this out with somebody. And I went and I saw a professional, and I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. This is great. They're just talking. And after 5 meetings, she's, listen, I can take your money and you can keep coming to me, but you are in a pretty good position. You have a good, stable situation. Like you should find somebody you can talk to. If you ever need help, come back and see me, all that stuff. And so I saw what just being able to talk to somebody else about things could help. And so that'd be number one. I actually experienced it myself. Number 2 is specifically for athletes, coaches, other than your parents or people that you live with, they care about you the most. And so when I talked about earlier about one of the guys that came to us and said, I need help, and I thought that was great. Like when they don't come forward, I feel like maybe I failed them that they don't feel comfortable enough to come to us as coaches for whatever reason, because they feel like maybe it'll be stigmatized. And I always try to think, as a student athlete, your coaches care about you more than anybody else, probably outside of your family, your inner immediate family. And maybe that's not the case 100% of the time in every situation, but certainly for the student athletes that I've encountered, I really do feel like that. And outside of the coaches, the people here, I think that's the most important thing. I think you trust that your coaches do have your best interest at heart, and that we have destigmatized mental health. It's not being soft, right? It is a challenge. People are going through things every day, and you have no idea. And it's supposed to be a challenge. Again, life is supposed to be some growth in life. Like you're supposed to go through difficult times, especially at this part of your life. I like to say this in recruiting. College is a journey of self-discovery. There is no other time in your life where you can go somewhere for 4 years and find more out about yourself. Like you've been home for 18 years, by and large, again, everyone's different, but for 18 years, you've been under a roof with family or someone. Now you're out by yourself, on your own, having to make real life decisions. So you find out a lot about yourself in those 2, 4, 6, whatever it takes you. And so, you're gonna have struggles. It's not gonna be perfect. And it is normal to struggle. And I think hoping that the student athletes will understand, come to the coaches. We're here to help you in any way that we possibly can.
I was just thinking maybe this could be a good sports metaphor. The way you build muscle is to tear it up a little bit.
Exactly.
That's what the healing part makes it stronger. Liz, how's that metaphor?
Sarah is resident metaphor person, and every episode has a metaphor, and it's very big in cognitive behavioral therapies as a way to help clients see things from a different perspective that maybe when you concretely explain it, it doesn't kind of jive. But Sarah,
trademark that one.
If we got through this episode and you didn't
No, and it's true. It's true, right? Like it's, especially when you're dealing with a team, it's, you don't lose, you learn, right? That's what you like to say. It's you either win or you learn. And so I think that's the way it is in everyday life too. You're going to struggle. You're going to make some bad decisions. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. I say this all the time. I was like scared of my own shadow growing up. I always was trying to do the right thing, and I made some terrible decisions. Fortunately, I was in an environment where those decisions that I made didn't do anything that hurt my future. And I think you want to pick a place, and you want to go to places, and you want to be around people that you can fail, and it's not judged, and it's corrected, and you can move forward. And that's, I think, really important.
It's interesting when you say you were okay until you weren't. All the coping strategies you'd ever needed to use, which maybe weren't that many, or you already had some naturally built in social supports and things like that, some good coaching terms that could pep you up, that type of thing. And then suddenly you didn't have anything. And Liz and I could probably say how many people are in our office who had that very same experience. This is more anecdotal, but I coach a few boys on it's called Let Me Run. And the whole idea is we coach them up to a 5K, but we also teach them about teamwork and how being vulnerable is being strong. And you should see these little 11-year-old boys just fighting all the feeling stuff. And I always joke with them. I'm like, you know how I see in my office? All the 35-year-old dads who didn't do this until they needed to. So if you learn it now, you're ahead of the game.
Okay, so this is the last thing. We didn't give this to you, Dan. Usually we give this to people ahead of time, but we have 5 same questions we ask all of you're an expert guest. Somebody's probably never told you that before. You're our expert guest. And usually we give these questions ahead of time, but we don't. But you're going to try to answer them. First question.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to define a dialectic first. A dialectic is when 2 opposite truths are true at the same time. What's a dialectic you've dealt with recently?
I want to use my kids as an example. My daughter, right? When I'm not home and I'm going recruiting, or when I am traveling for games, she's 8. She gets to sleep in my bed with my wife. So I walk out the other day going recruiting, and she says to me, "Dad, are you going recruiting?" And I say, "Yes, I'm not going to be home tonight. I'm not going to be home till tomorrow night about 6:00. She said, "Yes." And I said, "Does she really want me not to be here?" I don't know if that's a dialectic, but to me, it's like trying to feel value in my own home.
It's a dialectic between knowing that she has a connection with your wife and has that amazing fun with her, but at the same time, the pain it causes you, right?
Yeah, it does. And I'm like, "Mal, don't you want me to be home? I love hanging out with you, but obviously you don't like me as much."
Okay, song you listen to, Dan, to cheer you up. What's your pump song?
My pump song, boy, there's a lot of them. So I'll say this, right? Again, I have a strong connection with my daughter and my 2 sons. I have 2 sons too, but my daughter we like to go for walks at night. And when we go for walks, we put the music on and we listen to Roar by Katy Perry. Now it could be a little bit corny, but so I'm going to say my pump song is Roar from Katy Perry.
Oh, I was like, please say Taylor Swift. Please say Taylor Swift.
She loves some Taylor Swift too, but I'm more Katy Perry.
We're going to lead with that on your interview. I'm more Katy Perry. We're just going to start. What's a time that you failed at something?
Boy, every day, right? I think every day you fail, maybe, and especially when you're coaching. And and I'm very hard on myself, I think. So it's when you can't carry over your teaching to the players and you see it in the game and it doesn't look like you taught it. And so I think even in those moments, I feel like I failed. Doesn't mean it's terrible. It doesn't mean that we can't get better at it. But in that moment, we failed. So I think on a smaller level, I think every day I feel like there's some things I fail at.
Okay, your favorite way to cope, possibly with failures. Exercise, music.
Yeah.
Anything.
Ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Self-soothing with
what
ice
flavor?
Cream.
Yeah. Self-soup. Mint chocolate chip.
Fan favorite.
Yeah.
I'm more of a like caramel, lots of caramel in there. I like the swirls, the chunks of chocolate. All right. Favorite podcast besides this one, obviously. Favorite podcast.
Oh, man, that's a tough question. There's a lot of good ones. Let me try to pick one here. I listen to David Axelrod's podcast is really good. I think it's really informative. So I would say listening to David Axelrod's podcast, because that can be about a lot of different things. It's sports, it's politics, it's culture. So I like having something outside of just the everyday, whether it's leadership, because I love leadership, but I like to have a little bit of diversity in kind of thought and ideas. And so I would say something like that's probably a bad answer, but that's
no, it sounds like you stay curious. Like we talked about.
I do. I like to be curious. Yeah.
I don't know about you, Sarah, but I loved Dan. I wish he could be my coach. I felt really inspired by his positivity and his empathy and like excitement for college sports. I was jealous of his students that get to work with him. It seems like a wonderful program they have at Stonybrook.
I think you said it best when you said he's just born to be a coach. Just that I can't picture him in any other role. And I feel like he's the best person to give you that like morning pep talk. It seems like he can feel that balance out a little bit. But I know that not every student athlete experiences that or has that type of coach or the program or the finances to support extra mental health services on the team like they might have on some college campuses. So we understand that just because this one person was really, for instance, very proud of someone coming to him and saying, wow, I really loved that they felt safe enough to do that. That's not necessarily the case with all coaches, or people might have their own, even if the coach is very warm and engaged, has made it clear that's the case. People might be afraid to for other reasons or have their own belief systems around why they shouldn't show that side of things.
Yeah, I think Dan was talking a little bit about how he had to shed this internalized belief of mental toughness and buckle up and just deal with things. And I think despite the fact that has tried to be, I think, chipped away societally and definitely was evident in this program at Stonybrook, I think that is a belief pattern that a lot of people still have that aren't even student athletes, and definitely is something that you learn, I think, from a young age to put what's going on in your mind aside and to just focus on your body and letting it perform to the best ability. So, with those two factors in mind, Sarah and I thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about when there are some obstacles and the environment is too powerful, which we've spoken about in an earlier micro episode. So, tune into that if you want a more in-depth guide on what to do in those situations.
I think we had talked about three main areas that they can pay attention to. One is just our body doesn't lie, paying attention to the physical. The next one is how to perhaps challenge some of those belief systems that can work so well as a teammate and not so well when it comes to self-care. And the other is then what to do and how to balance radical acceptance about the situation versus when to really push for and advocate for change, how to create a support system outside of that team universe if and when you need to. So the first thing I think about is just the physical. Like I said, our bodies don't lie. When you start to notice some of the basic human needs aren't being taken care of, it's probably a pretty good idea that this is not a program that's ultimately caring about you and is only caring about your performance. So if they're looking at only the numbers such as body fat percentage and not paying attention to, are you able to perform well? Then that might be a good sign that that might be a sign that your program isn't as supportive as you might want them to be. Or if if you're not able to get enough sleep, if your diet is very extreme, if you're never encouraged to have any downtime whatsoever, which we know our mind needs in order to really regroup and perform better. We also think about this idea of team mind versus student or individual mind. And I think there's been a lot to show that having that push through mental toughness mindset can be really adaptive when it comes to pushing your body a little bit more, experiencing discomfort to reach a goal. Those things can be really helpful and might be the reason why you got that scholarship. And we saw Dan say, I was actually pretty lucky in that all those ways I had of coping and getting through difficult times worked really well, were really adaptive until suddenly I had something happen when it was a total loss. I was no longer able to manage it just with the coping skills I had.
When you were talking about that, Sarah, it reminded me that after our interview with Dan, he emailed us and talked about, we're asking all of our guests about their dialectics they see in their life and in the various roles they have. And Dan kind of thought about it more and was talking about how he experiences this tension between wanting to experience the process and kind of be in the moment, while at the same time there is this expectation in terms of his job to be very performance and outcome focused. And I can see as a college athlete that probably is also a similar dialectic. I definitely even personally struggle with that. And I think woven within that, if we expand out a little bit, is this idea that you brought up earlier about the team's needs and our individualistic needs and how sometimes those might be in tension because being a college athlete is so outcome focused that Dan kept saying like the team comes first and fully appreciate that. And at the same time, sometimes there might be an individualistic need that might be in opposition to what the team needs. It's a challenge when you're thinking about making wise choices for yourself and how hard that is, and then take into consideration this intense pressure to make sure that the wise choice that you're making doesn't detrimentally impact the team. I can't imagine what that must be like to navigate.
I think that it was really nice for him to come back and reflect more after our interview to say, okay, wait, hold on. There was this dialectic that I experienced. And it's true. At a certain point, coaches are paid and oftentimes fired based on how the team performs. And so it's this trickle down effect, which I think leads us to that final point, which is when is the environment more powerful than you are, and you can do everything right. You can go to people as much as you need and advocate for your mental health, and the environment just might not support it. You think about if coaches are asked to perform and then they're paid or getting raises or being fired based on those performances, guess what? They might struggle with the dialectic more. How can we get universities over time to say, okay, what kind of performances are we looking for here? Should we also be getting student rankings? And should we look at perhaps having student athletes rank their support systems in a school? And should that also be something that contributes to the paycheck, right? That some of these things have to come from the top, and people have to take a stand to say it. So we start to think more about advocacy in that place where you really need a movement to take care of it. I realize we are not able to do that here. This is not an advocacy or social justice platform per se, but I think us just acknowledging that at a certain point, you just might find yourself in a position where the environment is too powerful and your schools have not endorsed what we're shouting from the rooftops for. So how can you create a world outside of your team, your coach, and your sport when that is the case, so that you can have check-ins with them in addition to with your coach and your teammates? I also think that some people feel really connected to their team, and other people don't necessarily feel as connected to their team. And so on the one hand, this team can be quite a community. And if you're part of that community, it's great. And if you're not part of that community, it can be a real struggle because that's who you're spending most of your time with. Again, just making sure that there's always a through line, like phone a friend idea to someone who's not in the sport, who you knew has nothing to do with if you're a good swimmer or a good soccer player, etc.
Okay, so next week we are talking to Dr. Jonathan Fader, a clinical and sports psychologist who is going to talk about his work with professional athletes.
Thank you to our guests for sharing their stories and advice. This podcast is for college students, and we want input by college students. Please reach out by text, email, or voice memo to collegesfinepodcast@gmail.com or 929-500-2231. Tell us your story, give us tips on what kinds of topics you'd like to hear, or give us feedback about an episode.
Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Colleges Fine Podcast for episode announcements and resources. And last but not least, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast. Every hit of that plus button helps us keep going.